Hi, everyone, and welcome back to JFI's Cinegogue Summer Days screening of Those Who Remained. And I'm joined with the director of the film, Barnabás Tóth. Welcome, Barnabás.
Hello, Joshua. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting.
Congratulations. Yeah, absolutely. We love this film. We showed it at our Winterfest and really wanted to bring it back and give people an opportunity to see it that haven't seen it yet. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us today. So let's start kind of from the beginning. How did you find this project, and what was it that spoke to you and kind of made you want to make this into a film?
Well, I met the author, Zsuzsa F. Varkonyi. She's a psychologist. She's a lady, about 70 years old lady, and we worked together on different projects. And one day she told about this book she wrote. That's her only fictional work, actually. And I took it home, I read it, and I absolutely fell in love with these wonderful characters, that teenage girl and this doctor. And also not only their complex relationship, but the historical context, like between the Holocaust and right just at the beginning of this horrible communist regime. So horrible times, but still, despite all the circumstances, a beautiful relationship. So that was very inspiring. That's how it started. And when I met my producer, Monica Mage, we started applying to the Film Fund, then to the Media Council, and it was then supported by the Media Council in Hungary.
And I'm curious, how kind of popular was the book in Hungary? Was it widely read? What were the attitudes towards the book in Hungarian culture?
Yes, it was published twice before the movie, but it didn't meet a big success yet. It was not really in the common knowledge. I think rather those knew the book, who knew her works, her non-fictional works on psychology. She's more known as a therapist, as a doctor, as a scientist. So maybe a few thousand copies were sold. But I'm proud to say that after the release of the movie and the success of the movie, it was republished, and now it's some kind of a bestseller with the poster of the movie on the cover. So now it has his well-deserved renaissance, as I would say.
That's great. One of the major things that I really responded to in this film is that, we see a lot of Holocaust films that focus on the present of the horrible circumstances while the Holocaust is happening, or the buildup to the Holocaust, but you kind of seldom see the aftermath and the way that trauma kind of manifests later in people. So I'm just wondering what your intent about choosing to focus on that particular moment in time for these characters was like.
Yes, as you say, it was also very appealing to me, and also a challenge to work on something that hasn't really seen before. I didn't want to make another movie on the Holocaust, not only because I couldn't afford to, I wouldn't even have it to. I'm not sure about that conjugasm. I'm sorry about the grammar of my English. But yes, as I said, the aftermath was more interesting, and also I was realistic enough that given this small budget, I was allowed to focus on the emotional impact and this beautiful relationship, and only to show interiors. And even when I go back in time in the flashbacks, I wanted to show positive everyday moments of her family, and for his family, and only photos. I think it's always better to leave things on the imagination of the audience, and not to show, we've seen, as in the cover of the book, the author says, we've seen the horror so many times, it was shown and written so many times, but she and also I wanted to focus on the healing process. On the positive side of the power of love, even if it sounds cheesy, there is this universal message behind that. If you have someone to take care of, someone to live for, every trauma is survivable.
Yeah, that definitely comes across. And I'm curious, was the book written that way as well? And what were some of the major kind of changes or challenges when adapting it for the screen?
I would say the general atmosphere and the approach and this positive thinking is in the book. It's much longer. It's much thicker in a way that it goes further in time. I finished my story at Stalin's death in '53. The book goes until '67, so I cut out all the adulthood of Clara, and even there is the death of the doctor without spoiling too much of the book. I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to put that much sorrow and sadness on the audience. And also I had to compress some secondary characters, like mix them together, and a lot of flashbacks, cutting out a lot of flashbacks. We see Aldo coming back from the camps. We see it in the ghetto in Budapest, and we can read somehow like through nightmares. We can read and see some of the horrors, but I wanted to avoid all this. So in a way, the film is a bit lighter in a way than the book.
So it's a lot of paring down, it sounds like, of just focusing on the essential relationship of these two characters at this specific moment of time without a long arc of their entire lives. It's kind of what it sounds like.
Yes.
And then can you talk about casting? You have such fantastic performances from everybody in the film, but especially your two leads. The woman who's playing Clara, is this one of her first roles? Can you talk about how you found her?
Yes, I had a great casting director called Irma Asher, and she found her because Abigail Szöke, who plays Clara, she had two smaller parts before in Hungarian movies. She barely spoke on them, and she also played on stage a vampire girl. So it was very different. And when I went to see her, when she appeared on casting and I found her interesting for the next round, I went to see her on stage, and she had to pass further rounds in casting because I wanted to be really, really sure. It was because not only she has to be credible for different ages from 16 to 21, but she has to be thin. She has to be able to be aggressive, to be kind, to be woman, to be child. So it's a very versatile role, and I needed somebody very young. So she was 19 at the age of the shooting, so exactly the medium age, and she was very willing to work hard on the part. So she was really a dreamlike working partner, and also very photogenic. Her face is just so beautiful from every angle, in every light, and so it was great. And for the doctor, Károly Hajduk, he's an experienced, mainly stage actor, but he has also quite an important filmography. And funnily, if I have time to say this, they played together in a previous Hungarian movie. He played a serial killer, and yes, and a very, very opposite, different role. And she was one of her victims, a hitchhiker girl.
Wow.
And there's a horrible scene, but they came out happily from this first experience. So.
This was a television show or a film that they had?
No, it was a movie. It was a film. I don't know exactly I think it's The Strangler or something like this. I'm not sure about the English title. Strangled. I think it's right. Strangled. Yes, that's the movie. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
A bit of a different relationship.
Very much.
And so much of what makes the film work is the chemistry between your two actors. So that's interesting that they'd worked together before. How did you approach that chemistry? And they're very, especially Aldo, it's such an interior kind of performance. Were there's certain advice that you gave him to play a character like this, who's keeping everything on the inside?
He's such a professional actor that maybe we rehearsed a lot. We had maybe 4 weeks of rehearsals, which is pretty long and seemed enough for that amount of scenes. We went through all the scenes, first with the book in hand, analyzing why such character says that line and what's behind, and then we rehearsed it. They knew the text by heart, so it was like almost the whole thing was able to be performed on stage. That was so ready. But for him, we had to work on his tempo. He had to slow down a bit compared to his natural life speed, because he's young. He's a healthy young man. He's full of energy. So I had to make it a bit older, like someone who went through this trauma. So with a little hair, whitening or graying, and slowly and not blinking so much, And when I told him, like a machine, he was ready. I never even had to repeat it for the full length of the shoot, which was 19 days, by the way, 19 days of shooting. So we had to really be ready and focused. For her, her size, her female side, her woman side was ready. So she was, for the second part of the movie, she performed very well in the casting. But to be this teenager who is like a hedgehog, who is aggressive, who counterattacks, who's unbearable, who is, so for this part we had to work a bit on her voice, on her movement as well. So that was a bit, she had to work more than in the second half. Yeah. So, but for the chemistry, it came. I didn't have to do anything. I mean, it was well written. The book is well written, and with 2 great actors, it went almost automatically.
Yeah, it shows. And then how has the film been received in Hungary?
We had 35,000 viewers in the theaters, in the cinemas, which is great for an art house Hungarian movie. It was very well received. People were really touched emotionally, and then it was broadcasted on public TV on some Sunday evening. So there again, thousands of people seen it. Of course, there is always this minority, I would say less than 5%, which either doesn't even go to see it because it's, as they would say, I don't want to see another Holocaust movie made by Jewish people for Jewish people. They are just from their, I don't know, background or education or lack of education actually. And there was a very tiny, trolling, as we say in Hungarian, on these chat windows, like where there was this anti-Semitic comments, but you have to deal with it. I mean, it's sad, but I mean, that was not my target audience, I would say, and they would never come and see. I would be happy to talk to somebody after seeing my movie, but without seeing it, I'm not open to discussions about stupid things.
Yeah, I understand. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. I want to thank you again, Barnabás, for being with us and making this beautiful film. And I'm so happy that it's out there in the world and that people are discovering it. So for anybody watching who's just watched the film, please let everybody know about it. Tell them to see this film. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joshua.